Are you ready?
Bennett loads it, fires to the end zone, McConkey, touchdown.
You think that you're better?
Cuts inside a blocker at the 20, got another block at the 15, 10, 5, touchdown, Fighting Tigers!
Well, you better get ready.
Sprint out, throw to the right, caught! Right corner of the end zone! Mason Taylor! Tigers win!
Break it down!
Welcome to the College Football X with your hosts, John Nelson, John Wilkerson, and Phil Cantor.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the College Football X. Yep, X marks the spot. X marks the place where you can find out about the week that was in college football and look at a week ahead, because there's a lot to talk about this week. Statement game by UGA. The SEC is going to have some issues this year. Ohio State barely wins. Clemson loses. A whole bunch of fun stuff. Guys, might as well start at the top. The game of the century this month, this week, this year, Georgia versus Tennessee. Lots of people picking Tennessee to run away with that game, and I don't know how much of it you got to see, but what I got to see is there wasn't nobody running away other than Tennessee trying to avoid the 27 people it appeared Georgia had playing defense at a given time.
Well, when Georgia kind of took control of the game, I switched over to Liberty in Arkansas because I couldn't believe what I was seeing in that game. But
talk about that.
Going back to Tennessee, I thought when Georgia fumbled on their first possession and Tennessee recovered, okay, Tennessee is the blessed team this year. Everything's fallen their way, and when they couldn't score a touchdown, my thought process changed a little bit. And then when Jalen Hyatt stepped on the referee's foot and turned his ankle out of bounds on the next Tennessee possession, I'm thinking something's not working here for Tennessee. And then with, I know what Josh Heupel was trying to do. He was trying to keep that defense of Georgia off balance by the no huddle and the quick snaps. But in a hostile situation like that, that offensive line had no chance. And I by the time it reached 8 false start penalties, which I think was before halftime, you kind of knew that Tennessee was out of their element and Georgia was in their element. And what I mean by that, not necessarily they were between the hedges, but they've been in those big moments before, and Tennessee hadn't. And while I think Hendon Hooker played really well, but his offensive line just put him in situations where you went from third and manageable to third and long, simply because they couldn't stand still in that tempo offense. And I think that's what really stubbed Tennessee's toe. Had there been a normal type of approach by Tennessee and not necessarily trying to outsmart the Georgia defense, I think this game would have been a little more tighter. But it wasn't. And again, you can't underestimate the magic of Sanford Stadium. When that place is rocking, it's hard for their opponent to be able to communicate and be able to do what they do well.
John, how good was the game plan that Georgia's defensive coaches had?
All you have to do is look at how frustrated Hendon Hooker was in trying to track things down, and how the offensive line was trying to sit there and figure out, okay, what direction am I going? Who am I blocking? Where am I going? You had, I think that there are times, and to Wilkie's point, I think that there are times in big games where if you are in quote, end quote, unfamiliar territory, you try to outthink the room a little bit. It's like you try to outthink yourself.
Exactly.
And I think that's what happened here. It's like, oh, we're number one. Hey, let's try to be, trendy and hip. And it's like, oh, well, what if we do this? And what if we try to sit there and counteract what we think Georgia's going to do instead of being yourself? And in this case, Tennessee, I think, outthought themselves out of their own natural game plan. And here's your end result.
Well, if they would just slow things down a little bit. I mean, that's what Tennessee's problem was they're trying to go too quick on their tempo on offense. Okay, going no huddle's fine, but they wanted to snap the ball as soon as the umpire walked away from the ball.
But they played like that all season.
Well, not necessarily, because again, you're in hostile territory, but they were really trying to snap that ball as soon as the umpire left, with several plays already. But you've got the noise of the stadium. And then, I thought CBS did a great job pointing out, and it's something I'd forgotten about because they do it all the time, is Georgia shifting on the defensive line before the snap. And that was throwing off the offensive line of Tennessee. And that's something you got to pick up in film study. That's going to happen. For me, I mean, it's pretty much by osmosis. They do it all the time, so I'd kind of forgotten about it being a factor. But if they just would have slowed things down a little bit and processed a little more, I think Tennessee would have played a much better game offensively. But again, a big moment for a team that hasn't been in those type of moments yet, and they didn't pass the test. Now, I don't think Tennessee's national championship hopes or even SEC title hopes are dead. I mean, they can still recover, but they made life a little difficult for them. But now that they know the moment, hopefully they'll handle it a little better.
Yeah, I think they're kind of on life support there. They're at this point 2 games down to Georgia in the loss column. Don't see that happening. Speaking of SEC football, got to talk about this, the Alabama LSU game in Death Valley Saturday night. A game that essentially has eliminated Alabama from winning the SEC West because now they're down 2. They've got 2 losses on their schedule. And a back and forth game. You knew it was going to be close. You knew it was going to be a tough battle because it's impossible to not have a tough game in Baton Rouge on a Saturday night. And for those of you who did not see it, the game went in overtime. Both teams scored a touchdown. LSU went for 2 at the very end of the game and converted. Game over.
Yeah.
We've spoken over the years how much we don't care for Brian Kelly, the person.
Right.
But Brian Kelly, the football coach, took a big leap of faith there on multiple levels. Your thoughts about making that bold move, the right thing to do, risky thing to do, or nothing to lose?
Go for it.
I loved it because you scored the touchdown. Let's win it now. You're at home, and you captured some momentum. And why not go for the win? Yeah, you're risking not rolling sevens there, but I love the move. It's something Tom Osborne-esque. I mean, he did it a lot, and it cost him a national title in the Orange Bowl in '84. But I loved what he did, and going for 2 to win the game, and he rolled the dice. It came up 7s. Now, what does that do for LSU moving forward? They've got Arkansas next. LSU now is in a position to win the West and go to Atlanta. And the one thing that's impressed me about LSU is from week 1 to now, they've gotten so much better.
Yep.
So credit Brian Kelly for that, for making that team, because I don't think we thought this time after week 1 that they would be in this position, and here they are.
No.
I think Wilkie, to your point, you pull something out of the 2014 playbook at Notre Dame as the play that got you the 2 points in the win, but you've got momentum. You've got the score. You've got momentum. You've got Alabama on their heels. I completely get the play call. I still don't think Bryce Young is 100%. I think that there were times in this game where he really looked uncomfortable, especially with his throwing shoulder.
No, I agree.
And I think that when you are in that environment, you add all those intangibles that we talk about with Sanford Stadium and Georgia and Tennessee. I think that you add the same kind of intangibles with Death Valley on a Saturday night, you might feel things a little more. That tweak might be a little bit more painful for you. I think that, and when you're Bryce Young and you're trying to sort through everything with Alabama and all the pressure that's associated with it and all that kind of stuff, I don't think he was 100%. And I think that to the point that both of you've been making so far, love the coach Brian Kelly with what he's been able to do. Don't like the man Brian Kelly at all. But you've seen that progression with LSU this season. They've gotten better and better and better and better and better. And he's had to do it with different quarterbacks and tried to navigate that in addition to game planning, everybody getting adjusted to what Brian Kelly wants with his offense and his defense. And so you're having to juggle different ideas, and they've done it so far, and you're seeing what LSU can be. And I think that I'm going to hold nothing sacred when it comes to who could be in the BCS. Hell, we could have 3 of the 4 teams from the Southeastern Conference in there by the time it's over with all of the machinations that are there, because you know that what's best for business is the most eyeballs that's attached to it. And you can have any kind of a train wreck factor you want with what we had with 2 marquee names, Tennessee and Alabama losing, but I still think they're going to be hovering when it comes to the Final Four.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, under common sense, yes, those losses by Tennessee and Alabama should impact the CFP. CFP has never had common sense.
John, I don't know. When I was watching Alabama, you brought up Bryce Young and his shoulder, and I agree with you there, but I can't put a finger on it. There was just something off about this Crimson Tide team, especially last night. And it's hard to put a finger on what it is. I mean, the offense just didn't look as sharp as it has been in the past. The defense, especially the defensive line, just looked, that just a tick slower, and the fundamental tackling that I've always been impressed with at Alabama just seemed to be off a little bit. I mean, again, I can't put a finger as to why, but there's just something that just seems to be a bit off with Alabama this year.
Yeah, and their secondary got absolutely torched against Tennessee.
But again, there's just something, I don't know what it is, but just something seems to be off about them this year.
Yeah, and I think you're spot on with the secondary. To me, that is something that is that can be exposed against when you're playing the University of Alabama. I thought that was it. But also, you don't have the weapons on the edges that we're used to seeing. You're not used to seeing the 4 and 5 deep, whether it's that H-back that's trouble like a Miller Forrestall, plus a Mechie and a Kitchens. Those kinds of marquee names on the outside that can really do damage for that quarterback. They're relying on Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs, do not get me wrong. Jahmyr Gibbs did the right thing by portaling from the flats and going to Tuscaloosa because we knew the kind of talent that he was at Dalton High School. Yep. But the depth isn't there at running back, and the depth isn't there at receiver that we're used to seeing offensively. And you're seeing that Bryce Young is having to rely on individuals instead of spreading it all around offensively.
Well, see, now I know.
Speaking of teams that had their BCS college football playoffs hopes dashed, I'm going to take a second to brag here.
Go for it.
If you listened to the show last week, you heard me say that Notre Dame was going to beat Clemson. I was not impressed with Clemson. I did not think that they were a top 5 team, and they proved it. They made the trip up to South Bend and got absolutely torched by Notre Dame, a team that's not particularly great on offense but can run the ball, and really wasn't that great on defense, but they managed to absolutely they took Clemson to the woodshed. A big win, 35-14. Probably killing Clemson's shot at getting into the playoff. Notre Dame's not going to be in the playoff as they're already 6-3. Yeah. Real quick, were we all right? Was I right and everybody else wrong? Clemson was overrated.
Yes, Phil, you were right. We all should have listened to you. We all should have not played Powerball. We should have just listened to you and put all of our money on Notre Dame. What were we thinking?
Notre Dame in that one. Yeah, really.
Thank you. The check's in the mail.
Yeah, exactly. What really surprised me is how Notre Dame kind of dominated the interior lines against Clemson, and EJ Ugalele uh, just couldn't get it done. And and exposed a lot of things about Clemson too. That if you shut down Will Shipley, there's just not another weapon for them to use offensively. And then again, the offensive line Notre Dame's offensive line doing a great job on that front seven of Clemson, which I've always thought has been pretty good this year, but they met their match. We talked about Brian Kelly, the former Notre Dame coach, and what he's done at LSU, made that team better from week 1 to week 7, week 8 now.
Okay.
I gotta say the same thing about Marcus Freeman. I mean,
Yeah.
that team that we saw in early September is not the team we're seeing now. I mean, they've kind of settled in, and now going up to Syracuse and really taking the wind out of the sails of the Syracuse season, and now this big win at home against a top 4 opponent. Yeah, they're not going to make the playoff this year, but they're going to make a pretty good bowl. And you kind of like the future now with Marcus Freeman as the head coach.
This week.
Yeah. Got to agree there. Staying in the Midwest, Ohio State struggled with Northwestern. They did win the game 21-7.
They struggled with Mother
the
Nature before anything else, man. Did you see the weather conditions attached to that?
40-mile-an-hour winds, driving rain at times, and
Chicago Bears weather.
Yeah, to their credit, Northwestern held the Wildcats, played some solid defense.
They did.
CJ
They always
Stroud,
do.
10 for 26 in this game.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you know what? Great teams win grinders like this. And Ohio State came through with a 2-touchdown win. So we can say, yeah, and Northwestern's defense is really good. But Ohio State with the weather, with Mother Nature blowing it and making them cold, and just the way the game was a grinder, they were able to come through with a 2-touchdown win. So, yeah, on paper you could say they can struggle, but CJ Stroud had a tough game, but you know what? They got the win.
Mm-hmm. And Georgia's had one of those games already. They barely beat a bad Missouri team in Missouri, so it's not unusual to see this.
No. And I just marveled at Mother Nature and what she was doing to special teams and throwing the football. When you see a kicker line up for a 40-yard field goal, and the field goal hits its apex and then just gets Dikembe Mutombo'd and just goes boom, you knew it was going to go in.
No.
Mother Nature went, no. But no, and I think that, okay, so we've officially declared that Georgia had their grinder game. Ohio State has now had their grinder game. So now we're waiting for everybody else that's attached to the CFP to have those games that we've already seen from 2 of the top 4, the anticipated 4 from the CFP.
Well, what's interesting about that, John, is I watched a little of the Michigan-Rutgers game, and Rutgers was given a grinder to Michigan until the third quarter, and all of a sudden Michigan just went off.
Yep.
And
yeah, they went to another gear.
Yeah, and I was really impressed with Michigan. I mean, there was an atmosphere in New Jersey last night, and I was really impressed at how Rutgers was putting it to them in the first half, and then all of a sudden Michigan put it in turbo, and it was all she wrote, and they ended up putting 50 points up on Rutgers. So maybe that will be the grinder for the Wolverines. We'll see, but that Michigan really impressed me the way they responded.
The team that I'm impressed with that's really hasn't gotten any love from anybody yet this season, even though they're number 7 in the country, and that's TCU.
Oh yes.
They continue to roll. They haven't been always pretty. They haven't always put up humongous numbers and just beating people into the ground 63-3, but they keep winning against a pretty evenly balanced Big 12 with a lot of maybe not great dominant teams, but a lot of very good teams.
So you're saying TCU's in the Hall of Very Good right now?
I wouldn't be shocked if they're in the top 4. in the CFB poll coming in when it's announced on Tuesday. Max Duggan is, we shouldn't be talking more about him. I watched the TCU Texas Tech game, and again, he's just a confident quarterback that can make the throws and makes great decisions. And he and Sonny Dykes have really upped the game in Fort Worth. I've really been impressed. Now they go to Austin this Saturday, and that's going to be the test for them, for TCU, because they don't play well in Austin historically. And this is where we're going to see if this TCU team is national championship worthy or not. And for what I've seen so far, this is a team that's on a roll. After Texas, they've got to go to Waco, so they're coming into the meat of their schedule, where if they're going to be a national championship contender, they can get by Texas and Baylor. They've proven a lot to me that they deserve to be in that conversation with the Tennessees, the Alabamas, the Georgias that are fighting for, and the Ohio States and Michigans. So this is where we're going to see where the rubber meets the road with the Horned Frogs.
So TCU is your official gate crasher until further notice?
Until further notice, yes.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would totally agree with that.
Purple pride, baby.
One team that there was some discussion about being an outsider and sneaking in, the Fighting Illini of Illinois finally came crashing back to earth.
They did.
Yeah.
They lost to Michigan State 23-15. Michigan State's been mediocre by pretty much everybody's standards, but maybe Illinois wasn't quite the team that some people thought they were either.
I don't think they had a bad game. I mean, it happens.
Yeah, at home. Yeah.
Big shout out today to this week really to the Kansas Jayhawks.
Oh yeah.
Who have become bowl eligible. Eligible.
Leipold.
They won their 6th game of the season. They beat the quickly fading Oklahoma State Cowboys 37-16 at home.
Did they tear down the goalposts at Kansas Memorial Stadium?
That's normally I'm not a fan of that, but they have every right to do that. They have every right to celebrate however they see fit, because this has been one of the worst programs in college football for the last decade.
Yep.
And suddenly they're pretty decent.
Yeah, well,
Leopold.
you put in a coach like Lance Leopold or Leopold, whatever.
That guy.
I mean, he had success at Buffalo. Now he's brought that success to KU, and I'm happy for the Jayhawks to see them have some success on the gridiron. You mentioned Oklahoma State as a fading team. Yes, God knows what's happened in Stillwater. But when I watched when they got blown out by K-State, it just seems like it was a team that was just disinterested and going through the motions. I didn't get to see the KU game. Mike Gundy isn't going to bring his team across the border and the Oklahoma-Kansas border anytime soon after after the bloodletting they had.
How much of a leash do you give Mike Gundy now when it comes to, you just seem to be the perpetual 8-4 poster child here, but you're losing.
Yeah, I think they peaked.
Well, look, he's a cowboy to the core. He really never left Stillwater since his freshman year as a quarterback there. So I think he's got a pretty long leash. The other team that's fading too is Syracuse. Ever since they lost to Clemson, it's been a loss to Notre Dame, and now really a bad loss to Pitt. So that was smoke and mirrors too, although they're bowl eligible and they'll have a decent season. But they're going to fade from the polls and get to a minor bowl. So Oklahoma State and Syracuse are both fading teams right now.
Another shout out to a team that I never thought I would say this about. The Connecticut Huskies are 5-5 on the season. They beat a traditionally bad UMass team 27-10.
Traditionally bad.
Yeah, they are. Perpetually traditionally bad.
Jim Mora apparently knows how to coach a football team.
of a certain
Mora magic,
level,
baby.
of a certain level.
They did diddly poo out there.
Yes. But I think what we've seen is a coach that can take a team from a certain level and take it to the next level. I don't think that you've got and a team that requires building is what take them from like level 3 to level 2. Whereas if you're in level 2, he's going to have problems getting that team to being a top level team. I think that he can be a builder and build a program to that next level of success. I don't think that he can take a team that is an outside perpetual winning team, the one that kind of pokes its head in the door sometimes, that is chasing after major bowls, and make them a national contender. I think what we're seeing here with Jim Mora is that he can be a successful builder of a program to get you to the next level. You just can't get them to the top level. So congrats to the UConn Huskies. First time this kind of success since Randy Edsall, version 1.0. Not version 2.0, but Edsall 1.0. So where does he go from here? That's the next thing. What's that next level of success that UConn's anticipating? Good that you got them to 5 wins after just awful football the last time.
Well,
I got a shout out, Phil.
go for it.
John ain't going to like it, but I got to give a shout out to the Florida State Seminoles who dominated Miami. Yeah, take out the earbuds because it's really the first time I've had a chance to sit down and watch Florida State for a while. And I really like what Mike Norvell's doing there. And the dominant factor, they beat Miami, and Miami is
Not good.
They've got some issues. And I think it's going to take a while for Mario Cristobal to be able to fix those issues. But yes, John, put your buds back on.
No,
I really like what Mike Norvell's doing at Florida State.
That's why I took him out. I don't want to hear it.
They're not ready to compete for the college football championship yet. But he's getting players to come in. They're buying in. The offensive line of Florida State's the best I've seen it in years. So the bar there was pretty low, admittedly.
Exactly. So yeah, big shout out to the Seminoles. Glad to see them playing well. Sorry, John. I just had to
last game I got to talk about here before we get to go to the go to halftime here.
Yeah, let's see if your shout out is mine.
Liberty in Arkansas.
Nope, not my shout.
Well, now I'm taking out my earbuds.
I get that Liberty's a pretty good football team for the level that they play, but how did that happen?
Yeah, how did that happen?
You want my opinion?
Yeah.
My opinion is Arkansas came out the same way they came out against my alma mater, Missouri State. It was almost like, okay, we're just going to go through the motions. And, we got this game won because we're in the mighty SEC. And you know what? A splash of cold water hit them at halftime. That, you know what? They're in a football game. And, they did the same thing against Missouri State. They rallied, came back, made some plays on defense, wore down Liberty. Because I think toward the end, Liberty was getting very worn down, especially defensively. They had lost their top defensive player earlier in the game. So depth was definitely an issue with the Flames. But when they didn't get the 2-point conversion after that late touchdown, that forced them into a onside kick opportunity, which they couldn't convert. And there's your ball game. So they couldn't complete the comeback like they did against the Bears. Arkansas's got to respect their opponent. I mean, they had to know that Liberty was a good football team and not be surprised when they come out and put up 21 points on you in the first half. That they need to turn that corner if they're gonna compete in the SEC West.
All right, my shout out before we go to break. Tanner Mordecai of SMU. Same Pony New Express, 9 touchdown passes in the 77-63 win over the University of Houston in the highest scoring regulation game in FBS history. Secondary shout out to Clayton Tune, the quarterback for Houston, who threw for 7 touchdown passes in the game. So setting a new record for TD passes with 2 quarterbacks with 16 in a game. That went 77-63.
I don't think if you put their basketball teams on a basketball floor, they would have scored that much.
I was going to say when the Cougs and the Stangs play on the hardwood, let's monitor that score and see if they put up the same score on the hardwood as they did on the gridiron.
No doubt about it. Now, that was previous record was 15, Brandon Dowdy from Western Kentucky and Rakeem Cato from Marshall. 16 TD passes, 2 quarterbacks, 77-63 final. It broke the scoreboard.
Speaking of breaking the scoreboard, I think we're breaking the clock here as we head into halftime. When we come back in the second half of this show, we're going to look ahead to a busy Week 10. Or is it Week 11?
Sure.
I've lost track. The Week 0 thing throws me off. It's Week 11. Oh, well. I was close. Anyway, when we come back, we'll talk Week 11, what you can look forward to in another busy week of college football action, all that and more when we return for the second half of the College Football X. You are listening to the College Football X on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network. Like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe.
Hey, I'm Willie Nelson.
Thousands of veterans are living on our streets right now where they're being robbed, beaten, and even killed. And if this happened behind enemy lines, we'd be outraged. So please help us get our veterans into safe, permanent housing. Donate any amount at veteransmatter.org. Or you can text VETS to 41444. They fought for us, and now we fight for them. Veterans Matter.
Warning. Orthopedic surgeons are seeing an increase in overuse injuries when young athletes perform the same repetitive stressful motions over and over. Pitching, tennis, weight training, even long swimming workouts can cause overuse trauma that may require surgery. If your kids play and train hard, visit orthoinfo.org or stopsportsinjuries.org. A message from the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the American Orthopedic Society for Sports Medicine.
Playoffs? Don't talk about it. Playoffs?
Thanks for sticking around, everybody. You have made it to the second half of the show. This is the College Football X on the OSG Sports Podcasting Network, and we are talking about the week. We just finished talking about the week that was in college football, and now we're going to look ahead a little bit. The AP Top 25 has come out, guys, and to the surprise of probably nobody, Georgia is on top, followed by Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, and Tennessee at number 5. Any surprises there for you?
This poll doesn't matter.
No.
True.
The poll that matters is Tuesday night.
Will Tuesday night's poll show some differences with this one? Let's put it that way.
I think Georgia will be number 1. I think Michigan and Ohio State will be 3-4, 2-3-4. Mix it in, whatever. I think TCU will be in there. Georgia's clearly number 1, but the other 3 you can just kind of mix up and just drop wherever you want to put them. Right now, those are the 4 best teams in college football, and now that the SEC is, you get a 2-loss Alabama team and LSU has got a bullet, but will they be able to be good enough to crack into the top 4? Really looking like the Big Ten could get 2 teams in the playoffs, especially the way Ohio State and Michigan are playing. And even when they meet each other in their Eastern Division title game, the loser will probably still have a chance to get in, even though I don't think they should, because I think you got to win something to get in. But
short of
I think the Big Ten looks like
62-0.
Yeah, I mean, I really think the Big Ten has got the best possibility of getting 2 teams in.
Even if Tennessee is lurking at number 5-ish, getting close to the end of the regular season.
I'm going with your theory that the powers that be are going to want 2 SEC teams in. But yeah, I think Tennessee. I'm just kind of being realistic here about how things might shake out, and the way things are shaking out, it just looks like the Big Ten's got the best path to put 2 teams in. But I don't like the fact that whoever loses that Ohio State-Michigan game could get in, because, you got to win something to me. I mean, if it was like what the Big 12, if they just did away with divisions and Ohio State and Michigan played 2 weeks in a row, then maybe that would justify to me a certain pathway for two teams from the Big Ten to get in. But I just think right now that they have the best path.
What I think will eventually happen, I think TCU will get screwed, and I think
I can see that.
I think you're going to have two SEC teams. I think you're going to have
Yep.
two B1G teams, and they're going to be staggered. So you're going to have basically knockouts. You're going to have
Yeah.
one playing four. So my guess is Georgia plays the loser of Ohio State and Michigan,
Yeah.
and then you'll have the winner of Ohio State Michigan against Tennessee in your round of four. That's how I think. Like I said, I'm trying to think of this as a television programmer. I'm not trying to think of this as someone who wants to see something logically happen where TCU is number
No,
four.
I see where you're coming from. I see where you're coming from, and it's realistic because again, we've talked about this ad nauseum. The four-letter word wants certain teams in that Final Four that's going to that's going to build the audience, and I mean it's very plausible because those are the four teams that I think everybody wants to see that as national appeal.
Let me throw a curveball out here to the conspiracy theorists.
Yeah,
are we writing off the Pac-12 too early? They've got three teams in the AP top 10 right now: Oregon, USC, and UCLA.
Well, one of those two will knock out the other when USC and UCLA play.
Yes, I was about to say USC and UCLA will still have to play each other.
Yeah.
But outside of their week one hiccup, Oregon has looked pretty dominant just about in every game they've played.
Well, we talked about Brian Kelly, Marcus Freeman. Dan Lanning has done the same thing with Oregon, where they were in week one against Georgia to where they are now. They're a much different football team, and Bo Nix has now comfortable in the Pacific Northwest up in Oregon and Eugene. So, I agree. I think Oregon could be that team that crashes the party because why, John? They have national appeal and haven't
with the swoosh. But we have yet to see, outside of that hiccup early, another bad Bo Nix game. And those
that's what I'm saying. He's become comfortable in that offense, in his surroundings, and he's turned into the quarterback we all expected to be at Auburn.
Yeah. And you've got a fan base that is fired up about that too. But we still have yet to see Bo Nix as Fran Tarkenton in another game late in the year. That will happen because that's how he's wired. It will be somewhere late in the schedule where you will see schizo bad Bo Nix, and how does Oregon handle that game when it happens? That's the question. Is it even against Oregon State in the rivalry game? Somewhere late in the year, you're going to see bad Bo Nix pop up. How does Oregon handle that? That's my question.
No, I think you're holding Auburn. You're holding his time at schizophrenic Auburn against him. That's something that you can coach out of a player.
Yeah, I know.
But that being said, the Ducks finished their season with three tough games, very tough games, hosting Washington this week, followed by games against Utah at home and on the road at Oregon State.
Yeah, might be.
It's a baton death march right there.
Yeah.
But I think if they run the table and win those three games, I think that's a team that's going to get it. I think they are in. I do.
Well, they still got to win the Pac-12 championship game, which
that too
nobody watches and nobody attends.
That.
But yeah, I agree, Phil. If they run the table with that schedule, they win the Pac-12, they should be one of the top four teams in. And again, they have the national appeal that the SEC and the top SEC and top Big Ten teams have. So I can see them be under consideration if they continue to win.
Right now, if I had to pick it right now, and I'll throw the same question to the two of you. If I had to pick my four teams right now, they're going to be in the semifinals. I'm going Georgia, Ohio State, Oregon, and TCU.
Nope. I've got to play TV programmer here. Two from the SEC, two from the B1G, staggered, so you get basically knockouts each time out.
I think John's scenario is the most realistic, although I think Oregon could be that team that crashes the party again because they're out west. They have a national appeal. And if they can run the table and win the Pac-12, it's hard to keep them out of the top four. So I think that's the outlier. Tennessee as well. They might be knocked out, might be Michigan. I don't know. But I don't see, with the exception of TCU, I don't see anybody else kind of cracking that code. But I think it was you, John, said the conspiracy theories against TCU, and I kind of agree with that. This week, if they get by Texas, it's going to make it a great argument as to where TCU is with the great teams this year in college football.
Number 5, and the Metroplex will be pissed.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how it plays out. We've still got a few
Mark
weeks.
The tape. Just like last week, Phil. Mark the tape when you were talking about Clemson. Mark the tape, because when we get to the middle of December, we get close to National Signing Day, when all of our bowl games pop up and the CFP has their massive projection especial where they have all of the analysis and they wait 20 minutes before announcing each of the 4 teams in order. Then mark the tape, because I know that you'll play it, as you should.
Guys, let's talk about the week ahead. We go to the weekend of November 12th, week number 11 in the college football world. Some intriguing matchups. Of course, we have the Tuesday and Wednesday MAC action. Interesting game for my household on Thursday night when my Georgia Southern Eagles travel down to Lafayette, Louisiana to take on the Raging Cajuns, my wife's team.
House divided. Bring it, brother.
The game I'm not sure what how they're doing this season, but I know for us, a win gets us bowl eligible. So we'll see how that goes. And then we head into Saturday's slate of games. Not really a whole lot of slobber knockers here.
By the way, Cajuns are 4-5.
Yes, I saw that.
They need that one. They need that one.
Ohio State, Indiana early. UConn hosts Liberty with a chance to get into the make themselves bowl eligible. That's kind of going to be a tall order for Coach Mora and his squad. Looking down the list here, nothing really rings the bell until you get down to the 3:30 CBS game, and that's Alabama at Ole Miss, with Coach Kiffin's having a chance to send Alabama to the 3rd loss in 4 games.
Wouldn't he love that?
Oh yeah. I figured Wilkie Saturday would start with LSU and Arkansas.
Of course. I mean, it's a noon. It's 11 a.m. kickoff in Fayetteville. So that might play into Arkansas's hands because LSU is used to playing the 3:30 or night games, and they'll be traveling in, and they'll be coming off the Alabama hangover. So you got a fired up Arkansas team that wants to prove that the Liberty game was a fluke. But I'm really concerned. We talked about Alabama's secondary. Arkansas secondary is not much better. They've been torched throughout the year ever since Catalan was. We lost Catalan for the year. So I like Arkansas's chances because of those scenarios. But LSU is just playing well, and if it's a grinder type game, I like LSU in that game. But I'm hoping that Arkansas can pull it off.
LSU is currently at 2 right now, so that puts it within the mark.
Yeah, and LSU loss in that game would throw the SEC West into total and complete chaos.
I'm for it.
Yes, I know, because you like that chaos thing. Going back down to the Ole Miss Alabama game, though, what do you guys think about that one? Does Ole Miss really have a chance to knock off Alabama at home?
Well, a few freezes on the sidelines for Ole Miss, I would feel a little more comfortable.
Yeah, I got to go with Alabama. I think Alabama snaps back there, and they get closer. They get closer to those four in the CFP. They get closer and closer.
Yeah, I agree. I think Alabama wins this game. Um, they just got too many horses. Um, Nick Saban with his back against the wall, I don't think we've seen in a while, but I don't think we want to see. If you're an Ole Miss fan, you don't want to see it. And I'm sure practice is going to be really fun this week in Tuscaloosa.
Considering
So
that Saban also got trucked on the sidelines in the game too.
I know. So I got to go with the Tide in this game.
Yeah, I do too.
Hey, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Oregon hosting Washington in a big Pac-12 mashup. Washington's much improved this year. Oregon's been on a roll since week 1. I like Oregon in this one, but it should be an interesting matchup.
I like Oregon too. If this game were in Seattle, I might push toward the Huskies. Got a chance to watch them against Oregon State on Friday night. And, Washington is improving. And I thought Oregon State's a team that's kind of surprised people, and I kind of like what they're doing there in Corvallis. But Washington's is becoming a much better football team. So if the game in Seattle, I'd probably lean toward the Huskies. But when you're in Eugene and just the way that the Ducks are playing right now, I got to go with the Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, I got to go with Oregon there too, unless they're looking ahead to Utah, which is part of this discussion as well. I think they are going to take it a step at a time. I think that the Utah game and the Oregon State game could be the two where we look at Oregon State. I think that they take care of business in this one, so I'll go with Oregon as well.
Another game we talked about, TCU takes the ride to Austin to take on Texas.
Texas is a 7, by the way, early on.
Really?
Yeah, Texas is a 7-point favorite early on in this one.
That's a big spread. That's a big
It is
number.
a big spread.
I'll take TCU and run with that number.
Yeah, I think so many people are underestimating TCU. I like Max Duggan. I think he's a quarterback nobody knows about. And what I saw is, he's up there with some of the Heisman Trophy contenders. He's just not getting the love from that. This is a game where these are the type of games where he has opportunity to shine and catapult himself on the national scene. I think he's going to take advantage of that. I think this TCU team's much better than people give them credit for, at least the team I saw on Saturday. And I say they pull off the upset, which is strange for me to say since they're undefeated and going to be probably in the top 4 of the college football playoff poll. But I like the Horned Frogs in this one.
I do too. Yeah, I've got to go with TCU. I'll take that 7 and run right now. Absolutely.
And those are kind of your highlight games.
Well, I'll give you 2 sneaky ones just for the sake of context, and they're both in the Big 12-10. Iowa State's at Oklahoma State. Iowa State's a 1-point favorite right now in that one, just because we've been discussing Oklahoma State in this show. And
Iowa State hasn't exactly been a powerhouse this year either.
They've had a tough year.
Yeah, 4 and 5. You've also got what was my other one? Oh, K-State and Baylor in Waco. K-State right now number 13 in the poll. They're both at 6 and 3. Baylor's a 3.5-point favorite, which puts margin of push. So I think that K-State and Baylor should be an interesting game as well. Is it a marquee game? No, but for context and placement, I think.
No, and both teams have gotten better, especially lately. They've had some good wins lately. I'm looking at the ACC with North Carolina and Wake Forest. Wake's one of those fading teams now. And Carolina's done just enough to win games this year.
Mm-hmm.
They don't totally wow you, but they do just enough to win. The game's in Winston-Salem at the Wrigley Field of college football, BB&T Field. And, is this the bounce back game that Wake needs to have? Or does Carolina just have that much better against Wake? Also look at it this way. The ACC has kind of faded from the college football scene now that Clemson has lost to Notre Dame the way they did. And, is the ACC endangering themselves into being that fifth team right now, conference in college football? I mean, when you look at that conference, and it pains me to say that because I was so intimately involved in that league for so many years. Um, it just, the football product has just really faded down. This is a subject for another podcast another time. But
Oh yeah.
I just thought about that after what Clemson did, Clemson's performance against Notre Dame, and how much now nobody's going to pay attention to the ACC at all going forward, because I don't think Clemson's going to get the type of support they will need to get back into the national picture. I could be wrong, but it's just, there's just nothing there that excites you. I mean, um, North Carolina and Wake Forest, should kind of excite you since they're both been pretty good, and you got a coastal Atlantic type of scenario, but it just doesn't.
Guys, one more topic I want to hit on really quick before we wrap up the show this week. Shortly after we completed last week's episode, word was came out of the Plains of Auburn. They replaced their coach, Brian Harsin, finally now a historical footnote for the Auburn Tigers. Who takes that job?
John, go for
Cadillac. Cadillac.
it. Think Cadillac Williams ends up being the head coach there?
No. He's got this season. The key, though, is whoever they bring in, and my number one personally is Jamie Chadwell, that you have to keep Trevon Reed, Zach Etheridge, and Cadillac as a part of your assistance base, because recruits have been saying publicly that they will still keep Auburn in the mix if those three individuals are still a part of whoever the new head coach's staff is. I think that you've seen, at least out of the blocks in the first game with Cadillac, that seen a lot of guys that have not decided they wanted a portal, that they want to stick it out with this group. And it's historic to see Cadillac get the nod for these four games, and they will probably knock off Western Kentucky for homecoming. Next week, they've got the Quitter and ATM coming to town. That one will be an interesting one as well for them. But the key right now is, from everything that I've been looking at, just to make sure that Cadillac and the other two Auburn grads stay for whomever the new head coach is. But spirited effort. They had more guys out for the flu than Texas A&M did apparently in their game that they lost, and they didn't want to. Spirited effort. According to Keo Spikes on the SEC Network when he was talking about it, Cadillac probably poured a lot of hot sauce on his players for the halftime talk, considering how badly they were trailing. And then they came back and took it to free football before losing. Interesting to see Cadillac named as interim. Is he going to get the gig full time? No. But it will be interesting to see what happens on the plane.
Yeah, and all we keep hearing about is Hugh Freeze. And my opinion on that is, okay, yeah, he's SEC pedigree, yeah, but why would he leave Liberty for all
the New York Mets of college,
right.
For the New York Mets of college football?
Yeah, exactly. It's a good analogy. But I don't see Hugh Freeze taking that job. I'm sure some prominent Auburn influencers or
Jimmy Rain,
are barking up that tree. But I'm going to sit back and watch the search. I mean, the same name, I've seen Lane Kiffin's name attached to it. Why would he leave Oxford for Auburn? Again, if you've got a good thing going where you are, it's going to take a few years to clean up whatever mess is going on at Auburn. And which, John, you know better than I do, what it's going to entail to be able to clean up some of those messes.
Yeah.
Do you have the stomach to deal with that?
In the snake pit of high money boosters.
Yeah, it's a great gig if you can get it.
The snake pit. There are plenty of snake pits.
Yeah, it's a great gig. It could be. you have a chance to, you're in the best league in the country, and you have a chance every year to get great players and compete for a national championship. It's just, do you have to deal with the outside noise, and who wants to do that, and has the stomach to be able to handle that? So that's kind of how I look at it. Do you remember when Brian Harsin was hired? I kind of praised the hire of going outside the box, and boy, was I wrong in that assessment. It just didn't work out.
Well, it depends on what box you were talking about.
True.
Yeah. Requested reading for anybody that wants to get into the machinations of the hiring of Brian Harsin. Philip Marshall came up with a good play-by-play of the whole thing, from the moment of the discussions to the hiring to what he didn't hiring and all those kinds of. So look up Philip Marshall. He kind of has a breakdown of the whole thing.
Anyway, I think that's a good way to wrap things up this week. We've talked long enough. Guys, thank you for everything that we talked about. We've got plenty more to go as we kind of hit the home stretch of the college football season. Make sure you tune in every week here to our YouTube channel and on our social media pages on Facebook and Twitter at OSG Sports. For OSG Nelson, for OSG Wilkie, I am OSG Phil. We are the Online Sports Guys. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and hopefully we will see you and Brother Marty again next week. Bye. Like and subscribe.
Please like and subscribe.